Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Allen?
Here.
Mrs. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Here.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. Schiff?
Here.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes. Here.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Here.
Mr. Soms?
Here.
8 here, 1 absent.
Are there any, at this time, are there any resident or property owners who wish to speak before the council? That's Mr. Treaster.
Thank you. I almost didn't come tonight, as you can see by my elaborate dress.
We have a 3-minute limit, but we don't have a dress code.
Anyhow, something irked me today, and I just had to speak up. Actually, there's 2 things that irked me, and I just felt that the council should know what I'm thinking, and perhaps when the mayor comes in, you can ask him during his report to elaborate. The first is that I went online to the town's website to look at a copy of the zoning regulations, and lo and behold, the copy on the town's official website does not show the amendment that was adopted a few months ago. I go into the town hall and I look at the version that's on the desk in the land use department, and it matches the one that's on the town's website, which means it also does not have the amendment in it. So then I go to the clerks and I go in the vault. I did the vault about 2 weeks ago, and I looked at the regulations there, and it matches the version that's on the town's website, and it matches the version that's on the desk in the land use department, but it does not have the amendment. So I go to ledyarddevelopment.com, which is not an official Ledyard website. It's got a flag at the top that says this is not official town business. And lo and behold, it has a version that does include the amendment. And the amendment accurately reflects the flavor of what that amendment is supposed to accomplish, but it does not reflect the actual words that were voted upon when that amendment was adopted. So it doesn't do any harm, but it's not quite precise. So I do not like to see multiple versions of critical documents on official town websites. And I just thought that I should bring it to your attention. I've mentioned it informally in the past, and obviously it's a low priority and stuff, and I understand that, but I just felt we need to be aware of it. So, second thing, about a year and a half ago, I filed a formal complaint, photographs, everything, regarding the storage of U-Haul trucks at the Pumpkin Hill convenience store. The Pumpkin Hill convenience store was approved by special permits many years ago. And the storage of U-Haul trucks in the parking lot of a store that's intended to sell milk and bread and beer and wine, it just doesn't match. So I was in the zoning office today, and I talked with Joe Larkin, our zoning enforcement officer, and I asked him what the status was. And I was concerned because it's been a year and a half, and a year and a half ago, I asked the mayor about it. He said zoning's not a priority at this time, and I could understand that because the things were in a state of flux, and he had more important things to worry about. But it's been a year and a half later, and I was concerned. Just the last P&Z meeting before Christmas, the young man who apparently is the manager for the owner, or at least represents that U-Haul activity, came before P&Z and asked how he could keep the business going. And he was told by the commission that the commission directed Joe Larkin to not enforce the zoning regulations on that U-Haul activity. And they painted a picture that somehow or the other that U-Haul activity would be allowed to continue. It's an eyesore. I drive by it daily. It's not permitted. It's just wrong. So when I talked with Joe about it today, he said, "Well, yes, but we're trying to figure out a way. It's not a big deal. You could make the argument that a U-Haul activity, U-Haul's business, is an accessory use to a gas station, which is just absurd." I bet there's 1,000 gas stations without a U-Haul franchise in the same parking lot. So, anyhow, it just irritates me. And then I stepped back and I did some thinking. So, why is this happening? And this is going to sound critical, but it's intended to be constructive. And I think the town is going too far in encouraging business, too far in encouraging growth and land use development. It has the appearance of bending too many rules. The Gales Ferry School is an example. Special permits are required. Gales Ferry School full of new businesses, no special permit. The Pumpkin Hill store had gross violations of the sign regulations, gross violations of the U-Haul franchise business. Both businesses, looking the wrong way. The worst example, of course, is the business difficulties that the owner of Stonegate Village bumped into, and the town totally ignored virtually every one of the conditions of its special permit and allowed duplexes and triplexes to be inserted into that land use community, into that mobile home park. And those entered into an agreement that was developed in executive session. It breaches the leases. I've heard rumblings that the residents are preparing a suit against the owner of the property for breach of their 30-year land leases. Their land leases are very clear that is for mobile homes only. It's just bending one rule after another, and Joe indicated that the regulations are to be interpreted, and he's correct on that. And he painted a picture that if somebody doesn't like my interpretation of the regulations, they can go before ZBA. We dot the I's and cross the T's and follow the procedures. Something is wrong. The town is getting a reputation of being arbitrary and capricious in how it looks at its land use regulations. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention so I can see tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for bringing to our attention the issue of the amendment not being on our website, because I think that is important. And we need to follow up that, and I'm not sure where we follow up. It could be IT, it could be land use, but if each of you would bring it on, take a look at it on your committee, because it's disturbing to me that shows up on the non-official site, and it's not.
What disturbs me is that it's not the right version. The incorrect version on the official site, the incorrect version in the land use office, and the incorrect version in the clerk's office is more disturbing.
Right. Exactly. So, at any rate, we'll if you would take a look at that, and IT would also take a look at that. Any other comments or any other residents and property owners? Yes, Mr. Lamb.
Robert Lamb, 99 Lamb Town. I come here tonight to distribute some information to each council member pertaining to a letter that was given out by the Public Works Director. Some questions were asked. I met with the mayor on Wednesday of last week with Councilman Dombrowski, Steve Maslin, the Public Works Director, and myself. And out of that meeting, quite a bit of static started. I wish that you read this into the communications later, if you would please.
Lou is not here, but if you want to leave him a copy, I'm sure he'll get it.
I'm sorry?
He and Kelsey.
Okay.
Taxpayer asked questions, and pretty strong. Hopefully you people, as members that were elected by the townspeople, would check into it. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other residents and property owners wish to speak before the council? Committee, commission, and board reports. Mr. Cherry.
Hi, good evening. Mike Cherry, 5 Whippoorwill Drive. I'm Vice Chair of the WPCA and Chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. My reason for being here tonight is it's time for the cross-connect surveys once again to show that people who are now on Ledyard water and had a well that they didn't abandon, that there's no danger of cross-connecting public water with well water and causing a problem. It's a letter that's going to be going out citing the Federal Clean Water Act and the statutes in the state of Connecticut and regulations that require it. There is a fee if you have both of $38 to verify that they're not cross-connected. We're not going to charge a fee if we get to the home and find out they're not cross-connected, but we will mark that so we know not to come back next time. We are 3 years behind because people never called, or they called and said, nope, I don't have it, I'm sorry, we have to go look. And we're trying to update that database, so those letters will be going out, and I wanted to make that clear. WPCA met last night, and I don't want to steal Councilor Solomon's thunder, but we were approached by SmartLink, which is a contractor for AT&T, about putting antennas on the water tower, and we did authorize them to proceed with some engineering studies to tell us what's going to be done, how it's going to be done. And we have some experience with similar installations on water towers under the ownership of Groton Utilities, where they have a procedure, so they'll assist us as necessary to take a look at what they're proposing. They're also proposing, it's not part of Ledyard's regulations, and we're not involved, but a AT&T mobile phone tower on St. David's down on Route 12. And that will be controlled by the Connecticut Siting Council, because it's a new tower antennas. Last meeting, we talked about affordable housing, and I sent out as much information as I could to try and clear it up, what the numbers would be at mean family income, 80%, 60% for a family of 4. I used Councilor Davis's latest real estate news on what the median price was, so you could draw your own conclusions, and I provided a definition from the statute that I hoped helped Councilor Marshall better understand it. But as I said in my emails that sent that to you, it's not simple, it's convoluted, it crosses back and forth. The only clear part is that 839A talks about affordability, where housing is affordable if somebody making the mean family income for that family size in the municipality can afford to buy a home at the median family price, at the median home price. And by my non-professional quick analysis using numbers provided by Ms. Davis and some spreadsheet math, it looks like it's very true. The letter that you're getting ready to send to endorse Senator Osten's position is absolutely true. There are homes affordable in Ledyard for people making the mean family income. But what I will point out is mean family income for a family of 4 in our area is $84,600. I'd ask that as we look around and as the senator helps us, how many jobs pay $84,600? And how many jobs pay $42,300? So if you had 2 people working, you could still afford that median house. So any questions on it, I'll be happy to answer. And I'd be remiss to say, hey, I'll talk to Mr. Larkin about what happened to the change. What I would expect to find is that change filed correctly in hard copy with the clerk's office. It filed correctly on the town's website, and any documents you find on the plan and development site, everything we talked about, everything we did before we made that change shows up there in history. But it's supposed to be in the hard copy in the office and on the web, and I'll go find that. I'll also point out that the zoning commission did decide that a truck rental business could be an accessory use to a gas station. And I'll point out that accessory use precedes us significantly. It existed under previous zoning commissions. I won't mention who the chair was, but the day after he wasn't, he filed that complaint. I'm sorry he doesn't like it. He had an opportunity to be on the zoning commission. I personally invited him many times. He said that he couldn't be on planning and zoning. So I'm sorry he doesn't like what we're doing, but just because he doesn't like it, it doesn't make it wrong. And specifically in Stonegate, the judge made that opinion in his decision. Just because somebody doesn't like it doesn't mean it wasn't done correctly. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cherry. Any other committee, commission, or board reports? Comments of town councilors? Any comments? Yes.
I'll throw one out there quick. Just wanted to congratulate the Ledyard wrestling team for their 20th state title. It's the most in the state. And sorry Councilor Gabordi isn't here tonight because I know he'd be proud of that too. So congratulations to them.
Any other comments of town councilors? Oh, quiet tonight. Okay. Approval of minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
In favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Communications. I'm happy to read this into the record. It is already a part of our communications list, but upon request, I will read this letter or this correspondence into the record. To Linda Davis, Ledyard Town Council Chairman, please accept the following communication for the following dates: February 11, 2014, Planning and Zoning Commission letter pertaining to subdivision application 528, in a letter dated February 24, 2014, from Heller & Heller Attorneys at Law. I am making a copy for all council members of the February 24, 2014 letter for your review. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me. Respectfully, Robert A. Lamb, 99 Lambtown Road, Ledyard, Connecticut. And there are two pieces of correspondence attached. The first dated February 11th, Planning and Zoning Commission regarding Stoddard's View, to the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding Stoddard's View acceptance, subdivision application 528. After receiving and reviewing the core borings for subdivision application 528, they have proven to be insufficient per the memorandum sent by Steve Maslin on January 31st, 2014. This project does not meet Ordinance 45 pertaining to the acceptance of any new street into the highway system for the town of Ledyard. A review of the following applied asphalt that supports the curbing still does not meet the mandated requirement of Ordinance 45 for a proper foundation for the curbing. The recommendation of 1-inch overlay still will not meet the requirements of Ordinance 45. I would like to meet with the mayor and the public works director for an explanation of how this will be resolved. The estimated price of $40,000 is not enough to cover this project. If you have any questions, please do not hesitate to call me. Thank you, Robert A. Lamb. And then the third piece of correspondence is a certified letter sent to Mr. Lamb from attorney Harry Heller, dated February 24th, 2014. Dear Mr. Lamb, please be advised that this office represent Green Falls Associate, LLC of Ledyard, Connecticut. Our client is the owner of real property located on Bittersweet Drive in Ledyard, a portion of which property is currently being developed for the Stoddard's View residential subdivision. It has recently come to our client's attention that you have made disparaging remarks and comments concerning the manner in which our client is developing this property and constructing the approved infrastructure improvements associated therewith before municipal authorities, including the Ledyard Town Council. Your public presentations have included the submission of photographs which poignantly demonstrate that you have trespassed on our client's property. You are hereby advised that trespass is actionable at common law. You have no actual or implied authority to be on our client's property or to make any inspections or investigations thereof, nor have you ever had such authority. Our client has already suffered losses and damages as a result of your unauthorized trespass on its property and will continue to incur additional costs, expenses, and losses as a result thereof. You are instructed to immediately cease and desist from entering upon any real property owned of record by Green Falls Associates LLC at any time for any purpose. You are hereby further advised to refrain from making any statements, public or private, or from disseminating any information, including photographs that you have obtained as a result of your illegal and unauthorized entry onto our client's property. You are hereby further advised that Green Falls Associates LLC intends to seek recoupment from you for all losses, damages, and expenses which it has suffered and will continue to suffer as a result of your illegal and unauthorized actions, including but not limited to statements and allegations made as a result of your illegal and unauthorized activities. Very truly yours, Henry B. Keller. And those are in the record. You have received the rest of the communications as well as referrals. At this time, we'll move on to Council Subcommittee Liaison Reports. Admin.
Admin has not met since our last meeting, so nothing new to report.
Finance.
Finance Committee met last Wednesday. In addition to the items that are in the agenda, we continued our discussion on the water contract with Groton Utilities, presumably the forward path for that, as well as ordinances in town that were affected by changes in state statutes. We're continuing those discussions.
Any questions for finance? Information technology.
Information technology has not met since our last meeting. No report.
Land use planning.
Land use and planning has also not met since our last meeting. No report.
Board of Education. Anyone have anything on that? Who was out?
We submitted a report.
Yeah, submitted. WPCA.
WPCA did meet, and I unfortunately have a long report for you. So I'll try to hit the highlights. WPCA met last night, and as Mr. Cherry mentioned, there was a gentleman presenting information from SmartLink, which has been hired by AT&T to find locations to install cellular antenna for radios. Without reading all of this to you, I'll try and just hit the highlights. First of all, it became clear to the WPCA that there are two venues that SmartLink can go. They can either find locations on existing towers to install equipment, and if they can't find suitable locations, then they go to the Connecticut Siting Council and apply to build a tower. So that's something that we have to weigh when we look at installing antennas on the water tower on Route 117. The committee asked a lot of questions. There were verbal answers, but there was no actual material presented other than what had already been supplied. And Mr. Archambault, I think is the way to say it, stated that the drawings that provided aren't actually specific to this tower because they haven't been up it, they haven't inspected it. So they're requesting permission, as Mr. Cherry said, to go up and inspect the tower, and then they'll come back with more specific drawings for how they would attach antennas. As I've reported in the past to this council and also the WPCA, when the tower was built, we received specific instructions about making sure that we protect the tower as well as the coatings inside and out, because if we attach something that can damage those coatings, it voids the warranty. So as I reported at the last council meeting, the Groton Utilities has procedures as well as technical specs on how to attach equipment. So I think in the one sense, it's good for the town in that we're talking about somewhere between $2,000 and $3,000 of monthly revenue that we could generate. But we also have to keep in mind that if we put these antenna up there, some people consider them unsightly. And there will be a number of them up there. Once you put them up there, it makes it easier, to summarize, to put more up there. And other carriers can also apply to put antenna on the tower. And there's always this balance that if you say no, then they can always go to the Connecticut Siting Council and say, hey, we want to put a tower in the center of Ledyard because we don't have coverage. So those are some of the things that WPCA was looking at with regard to that. has also reported we're in continuing violation of the cross-connect inspection survey, which is required by the state. Cross-connection inspections are required in order to protect the public water supply from contamination by private wells. So homeowners are required to allow the inspection to verify the existence of a well and make sure there is no cross-connection between that and the public water supply. Meaning, if you have a well and you have a pipe that comes from that well into your house and connects, whether by valves or not, if it's connected into your water supply, that's a cross-connection. So if you have a contaminated well, it's possible to backflow contamination into the public water supply. So that's what it's about. A number of Ledyard residents have been refusing to allow Groton Utilities to conduct the inspection. And when Groton calls to explain what's going on, they say, I'm not paying, and they hang up the phone. So Groton has come back to the WPCA and asked for help with this because it's kind of a unique situation. Other towns, you know, they do what they're supposed to do and people comply. So some of the things that we discussed doing is looking at the shut-off notice because, you know, we could start with a letter and explain this again to the residents who are refusing. The list is growing longer, not shorter. So we are going to look, or the WPCA is going to look at using shut-off notices to tell people, look, you got to do that. The town is in violation of state requirements, and, you know, if you don't allow us, we stay in violation. So this is a pretty serious matter. Also, the McGuire Group has still not completed their report on the sewer facility studies, which has dragged out for a number of years. I went back and looked up when we entered into the original contract for Phase 2 of this project, which is what we're waiting for. It was entered into in June 2011. It's now 2014. So the WPCA is going to confer with the town planner to review the contract and send them a notification letter that we want the study completed. We also, or the WPCA also discussed the abandoned structures and excess inventory, and this appears to be a more serious matter than we may have first imagined. We've got excess equipment, we've got structures that are in disrepair, we've got chemicals stored there or have been stored there. They're a physical hazard and they're possibly an environmental hazard, and they're probably not going to be cheap to clean up. So the WPCA talked about getting some help from the town in terms of prioritizing what has to be done sooner rather than later, and maybe setting aside some capital funds for the things that don't have to be done right away. But this is something I think we need to take a look at. They also discussed and then moved to take action to defer assessments until residents of the Avery Hill community have been notified that they can tie into and receive water from the Avery Hill Road water main. The reason this is an issue is assessments have been levied, and if we send the assessment bills out and we can't provide service, residents could potentially say, and probably rightly say, you're not providing service, why am I being assessed? And if they refuse to pay, then they go delinquent on their payment, then an interest charge is filed or applied, and we don't want to get in the business of, we've learned this lesson, we don't have the authority to waive interest charges. So we think we have to stop the assessments for the people in the Avery Hill community. And last, the WPCA approved an invoice for special services regarding an ongoing pH issue on the Avery Hill Road well, and installing meters for new connections, which is a good thing. They then voted to go into executive session to discuss the long-term contract with Groton. And that's my report.
Are there any questions for Bill?
If it isn't feasible to put telecommunication equipment on a tower, the water tower, is there another site in case the siting council comes after us? Is there another possible site where they could put up a tower?
Yeah. So there are two very tall towers in Ledyard, one at the town highway garage and one at Wanderers Field. And one would think those would be pretty good sites. And, you know, we didn't see a coverage area map, but what was alluded to is that those towers may not be the best sites for filling in coverage gaps. I would like to know more about that.
What about the state police towers, used to be on Vinegar Hill Road? It's still there?
Oh, okay.
The latest technology for cellular communications is very small, has very small radius. There's a lot of bandwidth, a lot of data being transmitted, but as Mr. Archambault said last night, back when, in the early days of cellular service, you had towers 10 miles apart. And then when PCS came out, it was quarter mile apart. And now it's apparently even getting closer. LTE is the newest technology. And so they're very small radios with a very weak signal carrying a whole lot of data. So we're going to see more cellular towers as time goes on because they have to be closer together. But I think that's a very valid question. That Blonders Park Tower is so close to Lakewood Center and it's taller.
And
so
it's not in anybody's backyard either.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
Bill,
Right.
do you know, do you have any rough estimates on how close the towers need to be?
I don't think he was specific.
Talking like 4 and 8 mile radius and range, and that's going to show up in their next submission after the engineers get a look.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for WPCA? Yes.
Does the Avery Hill Extension service the Naomi Drive area, that neighborhood back in there?
Yes.
Does service?
Yes.
And what's been,
So that's the community that doesn't have water pressure now and is being assessed.
they're still on wells,
They're on wells.
their own well?
Right.
Okay.
They're on a community well. That's the one that's having the pH problems and other problems. And that's the reason we wanted to connect the Avery Hill community to the Holmberg tank.
And that's the pump house right at the end of the Naomi Drive?
The pump house is right at the end of the drive. It's a 12 or 24 foot, 28 foot deep well. It's in a low area, so water runs off of Avery Hill Road right down the hill and possibly contaminate that well. So it's a problem that's long needed to be fixed.
So if the area hooks in, will that house come down? That pump house?
That's another building that has to be removed. The well has to be abandoned, filled, the house has to come through. Yes.
Any other questions? Yes.
Yep. Last thing, just with the McGuire Group contract, given that it's going on 3 years, I hope that the WPCA will find that putting a study completion date in there would be useful.
Yes.
We do want it completed, and 3 years is long enough.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yes.
One quick comment. It is refreshing to hear reports from the WPCA that are actually WPCA and not trying to organize WPCA. It's been just a couple of years now where WPCA could barely get its act together. But now, you guys are...
Well, that was us. Yeah, no, you're right. Before we gave it up. You're absolutely right.
And now you guys are doing real WPCA work, and that's just so good to hear.
I commented last night. It was a great meeting. Moved through the agenda items, addressed them, decided.
Yeah, you don't spend an hour trying to figure out what's going on with the money.
Yeah.
Thank you for the comment. Just one quick question. How often does the state require the cross-connection inspections?
I think if you have a known well, it may be every year, but if you... It's every 5 years if you don't have a known cross-connection.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank
We
you.
have backflow preventers every year.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Any other liaison reports? Building committee, pension?
They have met. I've not been able to attend the meetings due to travel to work.
Report of the mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I attended a Council of Governments meeting last week, and Congressman Joe Courtney was the guest speaker, and one of the things he did speak about was looking forward to the congressional session, the fact that he did not believe that there was any support for a BRAC, a base realignment commission. But, the news, the economic news in Connecticut tends to be daily. And if you looked at the last couple of days, the Secretary of Defense now speaking about a smaller military and actually used the phrase closing bases. And so, again, I think it's a sobering thing that we're seeing around in this area, in our economy. I was a few minutes late because I was attending a rather large Chamber of Commerce activity and meeting in Norwich, and represented all the major hear optimistic things. We think we're, always one step away. And, in speaking with the publisher of the day, I think we both agreed that, the economy is not improving as we know it, because we're not doing the things we need to do in government to help it to improve. And so I think we need to be very cautious with that as a town when we look at things, which leads me to my next point, which is budget preparation. And I will say I am scheduled to file my budget on Monday, and I will do that. And the budget is not good news for the taxpayer. And I believe that we have hard decisions that we're going to have to make in terms of this budget, and then hopefully continuing after this budget to look at our town government, what we do, how we do it, and what it is we need to do. Finally, on the, I do have a report on the pension. I wasn't at the pension board meeting this month, but to tell the council that ING, who is our new provider, has begun its meetings with employees, specifically on the 457 plan. And there's two parts to that. There's those that are in the defined contribution plan pension, and then all employees in the town who can participate in that as a supplement to their defined benefit plan. So that's something we've been waiting for. It's very important, I think, both in terms of our employees and getting our employees knowledgeable about their options and providing for their future, and also for the town and having a provider now of our pensions that will be aggressive in working with our employees. That's my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for the mayor? Yes.
Mr. Mayor, last night at the Social Services Board, you mentioned in the budget there was going to be some changes, a new way of looking at things, and perhaps some reduction in staff and more flexibility in how people work. And I think Monday or Tuesday, you're the first one up for the budget meetings. Could you, for those of us that plan to come, give an overall, as opposed to, like last night, it was just this, you mentioned social services, give us an overall as opposed to piecemealing, so we have some idea as to what your vision is. And I think it's easier that way to look at the entire budget as opposed to picking little things.
Yes, that's a very good suggestion. Thank you very much. I will do that.
Okay. Any other questions for the mayor? There are not. Moving on to old business. Would item number 1 was tabled at the last meeting. Would anybody like to remove that item from the table?
I make a motion to remove item 1 from the table. Second.
Motion's been made and carried. That motion's been made and seconded. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Mr. Dombrowski, would you like to make the motion?
I make a motion to approve the installation of a public water main on town-owned property at 794 Fairway Highway to serve the proposed Ledyard 2 subdivision.
Second.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Discussion.
So this subdivision has gone through the approval process to the Planning and Zoning Commission. WPCA has got an application for the water tie-in. Wetlands has approved the proposed putting the water line across town property versus the applicant property to avoid going through the wetlands and through water courses. There had been some discussion at both the land use committees and that last town council meeting about what can the developer do for the town. But looking through state statute and what we're allowed to do, we cannot ask the developer to do something that's off of the property that they're developing for improvements. And the other thing is what we are actually just voting on in this case is allowing the applicant to put the water line over town property. And that's really it.
Questions? Further discussion? Yes.
I have made several statements about this in the past, so I put my comments in writing, and I will provide those as record, but I'd like to read them into the record as well. So as the councilors know, the motion to allow water main crossing over town-owned land was tabled at the last town council meeting because I expressed reservations that we have no legal opinion regarding the town's options, and because the town gets nothing in return for what, in effect, will save the developer thousands of dollars. I've since been informed since the last meeting that in addition to the case law that was presented by Chairman Mike Cherry of the Planning and Zoning Commission at an earlier WPCA meeting about this topic, that there are state statutes that clearly say the town cannot require the developer to install infrastructure outside his own property. So I will withdraw my objection about the lack of legal opinion. I am convinced that we would be spending money on an attorney to tell us what we already know. But, as background, the town is requiring Mr. Silvestri to connect to town water under state statute because there is a water main within 200 feet of his property on Route 117. Mr. Silvestri is asking permission to cross town-owned land to supply water to his development. I'm disturbed by the fact that Mr. Silvestri is doing nothing for the town in return for the right to use the town's land to connect his development to the 117 water main. There's nothing the town can do at this point to get him to do anything in return for this use of publicly owned land. In light of that, I want to provide the history of the support that Ledyard, its volunteers, and its professional staff have provided to Mr. Silvestri with his application, because regardless of what the town will or will not get in return, Mr. Silvestri has asked for and received significant relief from the town, and while I believe that what he is doing is legal, it is not good for Ledyard. In the summer of 2010, Mr. Silvestri approached the WPCA with drawings showing a water main that he proposed installing along Iron Street to supply his new development. The water main would supply all of the residents on Hilltop and Stevens Avenue with water, including fire hydrants, as well as his own development. At the time, he showed the WPCA 3 homes further along on Iron Street that were originally proposed to receive water from this main, but considering the expense of 1,000 feet of water mains as originally proposed, he asked that the WPCA relinquish those homes from its service area and allow them to be served by the Southeastern Connecticut Water Authority, commonly known as SQUAM. Since the original plan was designed, proposed, and presented by Mr. Silvestri and his representatives, I did not see the logic of allowing him this relief in order to save him the expense, because those 3 homes would not receive fire protection from SQUAM. I voted against the motion, but it did pass. At the time, Mr. Silvestri assured the WPCA that he intended to install the remaining 520 lineal feet of water main that would supply the residents at Hilltop and Stevens along with his own development. In the fall of 2013, Mr. Silvestri approached the Land Use Planning Committee with a motion before the council tonight requesting permission to cross town-owned land with a water main to supply water to his development. I reminded him then that his development had been approved with plans showing water supplied by a main on Iron Street. He stated that he had no recollection of that and would never have proposed installing a main on Iron Street. I later sent copies of his drawing to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission along with correspondence in connection with the water main as originally proposed. And in your packet tonight, that is Via Verde correspondence dated 11/4/2009, and Via Verde Sheet 12, dated 10/25/2010, showing the water main. I was later informed by the Chair of Planning and Zoning that Mr. Silvestri never filed those plans, which made them null and void, even though he did receive relief from the WPCA in 2010, and Ledyard agreed to change its service area by turning those homes over to SQUAM. A copy of the letter from WPCA confirming this agreement at the time is also in your files, labeled WPCA Application 516, dated 11/24/10. After the Land Use Planning Committee took no action on his request, Mr. Silvestri then submitted his application for the development to the Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, which approved his plan to cross town-owned land in consideration that it's a better alternative than installing the main through wetlands on Route 117. Mr. Silvestri again returned to the Land Use Planning Commission requesting permission to use town-owned land for water main access. So, in summary, Mr. Silvestri has received multiple approvals for his development from the town. The first approval was based in part on a plan to install new water main to benefit the town and its residents. The town has changed its service area, meaning the water service area, given up 3 water customers to save Mr. Silvestri the expense of installing 1,000 feet of water main instead of only 520 feet of main. 3 new homes in the development will not have fire hydrants as a result. Mr. Silvestri then withdrew that plan to install any water main on Iron Street, saying the road had just been paved. The town is now being forced to allow Mr. Silvestri to cross publicly owned land to supply his development. Mr. Silvestri has saved thousands and thousands of dollars by not installing the water main that he originally proposed, and Ledyard gets nothing. This is legal. The town has no recourse. But I believe it is a very bad outcome for Ledyard. I don't intend to ask my fellow councilors to vote with me against this motion because we are obligated to allow it, but I intend to vote no on principle, as I told Mr. Silvestri in the phone. Thank you very much.
Any other comments?
We discussed this the last time. There was discussion that as he puts the water main across the town property, you have to disturb it, they restore it back, I presume.
Yeah.
There was discussion about putting a parking area with access to walk the property and have access to the open space that's going to be in the back. Was there any discussion about that? It wouldn't have been a pavement. There was discussion about putting a, finishing it with a stone, and having like an entryway to be able to access that property after you put the main in, restoring the property.
I don't recall that.
We didn't hear that. I didn't recall that. Yeah.
Okay.
That may have been something through the planning, they approved the site plan,
Okay.
but that would be through planning commission.
So what would happen if we voted against this?
He would have to put what would end up happening is if we voted against it, he would have to run the water line across the wetlands. And through the property that he owns, and then the property that he owns to run the water line through the wetlands and the water courses and everything else would then be deeded to the town because that's where the water line is. So ultimately, the property would become the town's anyway. And also the property that he had originally planned, that's his property to run the water line through, is intended to be deeded to the town as open space. So to the town, it means, I think we would still own the property in open space where the original water line would stay on his parcel. It just avoids going through the water court and disturbing the wetlands by going through town property.
And it's not just wetlands, there's two
There's
crossings.
two stream crossings.
Have to make, as well as just generic wetlands.
Right. In actuality, where the water line was correct, it was originally believed to be outside of the water, but it's actually just skirts the wetlands, so it's still kind of in the wetlands, but it's less disturbing to go through the town property than on the applicant's property, which, like I said, ultimately is going to be turned over to the town's open space anyway.
Any further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Soms?
No.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
7 in favor, 1 opposed.
Motion carries. Agenda item number 2 under old business was also tabled at the last meeting. Would you like to remove
I
that?
make a motion to remove item number 2 from the table.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded to remove it from the table. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Do I have to move it?
Remove it from the table.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries at this time. Go
I
ahead.
make a motion to approve a letter to Senator Kathy Austin regarding affordable housing as contained in the draft dated February 13, 2014.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Just a little history for those listening in.
I'd like to turn this over to Councilor Soms.
The draft is actually dated February 26, 2013.
I stand corrected. Friendly amendment. I'll turn this over to Councilor Soms since he's the one who actually drafted the letter.
So this is in connection with the comments made by Chairman Cherry of the Planning and Zoning Commission regarding affordable housing and what counts as affordable housing and what doesn't. Senator Austin appeared before the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governors governments, and made comments about the fact that there is a lot of affordable housing. If you do the math and look at median home income, or median income, median house price, there's a lot of housing that qualifies as affordable, but it's not on the land records as officially affordable per the state's formulas. That makes it makes towns like Ledyard subject to state statute 832, which requires if you don't meet a certain minimum quota of affordable housing as defined by the state, then your zoning laws are in most cases, can be ignored, and housing can be built. It doesn't fit zoning, can possibly cross some other areas of concern for the town. And all of the local governments in southeastern Connecticut agree with this. There are, I think, only 3 towns that actually qualify: New London, Norwich, and maybe one other. So the Land Use Planning Commission wrote this letter and put it forward as a letter of support for Senator Austin's comments and in support of the Southeastern Connecticut Council of Governments.
Any other questions? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
9 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. The third item that was tabled, correct, or was
We
it?
took no action last
We
time.
took no action.
We're still not ready to move on.
You're not ready to move on it. Okay, so moving to new business. Would anybody like to amend the agenda under new business at this time? We'll move on to item number 1 under new business, admin.
So I move to adopt the proposed an ordinance amending an ordinance withholding approval of building applications for property for which taxes or water and sewer rates, charges, or assessments are delinquent, as contained in the draft dated February 12, 2014.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. I believe there's going to be one change, 2 changes. Go ahead, Mr. Dombrowski, we'll let you go for it.
First change is going to be in the purpose section, just a typo, so that it'll read, certificate of occupancy or the permit application made to the Ledyard building official shall be withheld for a real property upon which taxes or water and sewer rates, charges, or assessments imposed by the municipality are delinquent for the property for which an application is made. So just the and changing to an A. And the second change is going to be to section 2D. The last sentence changed to read, charges or assessments imposed by municipality are up to date and current.
I still think that's what Doug just, I think it's simply are current.
I don't have ownership either way.
I think just.
We all agree current is
Current.
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 Current is current. Any other discussion? Are we all in agreement? Roxanne, we'll find out if we're all in agreement. Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Finance, item number 2.
Make a motion to set a public hearing date for March 12, 2014 at 6:45 p.m. in the council chambers, 741 Colonel Ledyard Highway, to receive comments and recommendations regarding the proposed ordinance, amending an ordinance for purchasing as contained in the draft dated February 12, 2014.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Now this motion is just to set the public hearing. Does anybody have any questions?
Just briefly, there was in the last legislative session, the legislature passed Public Act 13-71, which authorized towns to increase the threshold where you had to go out for competitive bid to up to $25,000. Our existing ordinance capped that at $7,500, so we're taking a look at that. This is the product of that discussion.
Thank you. Any further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Item number 3, Mr. France.
Make a motion to authorize the Public Works Winter Operations FY14 budget to be overspent by up to $173,000. In addition, appropriate $91,259 from the state special revenue grant to account line 1014017-56301 salt and sand, and approve transfers as follows as of April 1 to cover the remaining over expenditures in accordance with Chapter 7 of the Town Charter. Up to $20,000 from 10110015870 Town Council contingency. Up to $10,000 from 1014501532215 IWWC consultant. Up to $2,000 from 1014501561100 IWWC operating. Up to $50,000 from 101201015160 police salary. To the following account line item lines as needed to cover snow operations overages only: 1014-0103-51815, overtime snow plowing; 1014-0103-51805, part-time snow plow drivers; 1014-0103-58300, employee reimbursement meals; and 1014-0107-56301, salt and sand.
Second.
Further discussion.
Just briefly, Finance Committee's been following this for about a month and a half, about 6 weeks. The mayor has brought, with Mr. Maslin, an update on where we were. So clearly the winter has been substantive. We've had lots of snow and cold weather that has prompted substantial amounts of salt and sand to be put down. We have about double the anticipated budget this year. As we monitored this in the last Finance Committee meeting, two Finance Committee meetings ago, we had exceeded the existing budget per town charter. We need to authorize the over expenditure. The mayor at the last Finance Committee meeting brought his proposal, which was before us now, how to cover the anticipated overage, which we think $173,000 should cover the remaining parts of the winter. Questions?
I'd just like to point out the New London Day article was a little bit misleading a couple of days ago. That article seemed to indicate that this was already done. Obviously, not that I have any intention of voting against this, but the article made it sound like we had already spent this money and made this expenditure, which is not the case. We're doing that now.
Well, some of the money has been, we've exceeded the budget. The whole $173,000 has not been expended, that is correct, but we have exceeded the budget.
Right, I'm just saying the article made it sound like we had already moved the money into the new budget, and it's a little bit misleading.
Yes.
Councilor France, how are we able to take up to $50,000 from a salary line item?
Because we have one fewer officer than was budgeted for.
Okay.
And we have at least 2 short. We average it over the year, so yes.
It's essentially one officer that I had on the staff that we budgeted for.
Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Of course, we have another big snowstorm maybe coming, so they need to be doing.
That's your deck.
We will be measuring. Any further discussion? Roxanne, would you call the roll?
Mr. Allen?
Yes.
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mr. Dombrowski?
Yes.
Mr. Eichelberg?
Yes.
Mr. France?
Yes.
Mr. Marshall?
Yes.
Mrs. McGrattan?
Yes.
Mr. Soms?
Yes.
8 in favor, 0 opposed.
Motion carries. Unless anyone else has any items under work session issues, we have a number of budget work sessions coming up, so I think we'll be meeting often enough that,
Motion to adjourn.
there you go. Second. Meeting adjourned without exception.
59 minutes.
Email distribution from, I think it was North Carolina, Special